I'm trying to remember who else. Lance Thompson was there for a bit. What was the other guy's name who went to Florida, who was the alumni from there that was really good? It seemed like a good coach. He coached for Beamer for a little while, and then when he left to go to Florida, I'm going to have to go back and look that up now because I'm completely blanking on his name. But at the end of the day, this defensive guru of a head coach, Will Muschamp, not able to produce the defensive lines or the defense that we expected.
Right. Let me see here. Who would that have been?
Now we're both doing it.
Now we're blanking. We'll get to it.
We'll get it. I'll come back and pull it up. But didn't think I'd have to talk about that today. The Florida defensive. I don't know if he's the defensive line coach, but I'll look that back up.
Yeah.
But with all that being said, you look at this team. I don't know why. I'm 43 years of age now. I don't know why, Tyler. I had never really noticed how imperative it is not just to have quality defensive linemen, but to have depth, to be able to rotate a 3 deep in there and have your guys divvied up a little bit where you get your third string maybe 10 to 12 snaps.
Sure.
Your second team goes up to maybe 20, and your third team guy, or excuse me, I go backwards on that. Your first team guys are getting the bulk of the snaps.
And that was one area that we were the most excited about for last season, just given the depth and experience that you had. And if we were doing a list of 1 through 9 a year ago, that was probably going to be at the very bottom in terms of areas of concern. Obviously, unless injuries cropped their ugly head, which fortunately they didn't, because Boogie and Tonka, guys like that. Obviously, DeAndre Jules was here for a couple of years and was able to factor in a little bit when they obviously needed him. And you just had that experience up front that was able to help you in the run game. TJ Sanders obviously as well, that can get after the quarterback too. So you just had a ton of experience up front. And when you have those guys that can kind of plug those holes, and you obviously have the pass rush coming off the edge as well, that helps too. That created kind of the front for this defense that allowed everybody else to be successful.
Mike Peterson.
Okay.
Mike Peterson, who I did enjoy talking to, so now I feel bad. But with all that being said, he's an assistant coach at the edge position. To me, it is rotating depth here. It's why South Carolina took 2 guys that most people might be like, who, why, where? It would be Devontae Miles from Bowling Green. People looked at his stats when he came on via the transfer portal, and people looked at him and was kind of like, well, wait a minute now. Look at what he did at Bowling Green. How's he going to do anything in the SEC? But you don't need him to play 20 snaps.
Right.
You need him to go in and give you a quality, what I'd say 8 to 14 snaps a game. Wear some of those offensive linemen out. Maybe throw it kind of like basketball. In basketball, you got your guy who goes in there and eats up his 5 fouls, throws a couple elbows, irritates the other team.
Yeah.
Maybe that's Devontae Miles in this situation.
Yeah, if you're kind of thinking about who your feature guys in the front of this defense are going to be, it's probably going to be Gabriel Brownlow-Dinley and then some kind of combination of Nick Barrett and Monkel Goodwin based on what we kind of think as of right now coming away from spring. Because, again, Brownlow-Dinley was a highly touted guy coming out of high school just like Monkel Goodwin was. Nick Barrett obviously did redshirt last year with the idea that he was going to be more featured player in this defensive front this upcoming year. Xavion Hardy, the best player out of JUCO, also comes in, but you kind of same thing with him and Devontae Miles is how can you fare in your first year here? These guys do have extra eligibility, so are we thinking of them as maybe longer term plays and not somebody that's going to come in and wreak havoc in year number 1? We'll have to see. Again, this is an area that has so much turnover and so much new to it. We truly aren't going to know until we see toe meat leather coming up here in 52 days.
Yeah, when you say so much turnover, it is interesting because last year we were familiar with all the guys. Huntley had been here forever. Hemingway had been here forever. You looked at DeAndre Jules, who came in last year and was able to provide quality snaps again and might have been a big part in not winning the bowl game. I think he was still out for that, if I remember correctly. But he came in and was kind of the big, strong guy in the middle who could eat up a double team.
Yep.
And then, again, you had a guy like TJ Sanders who kind of was, as Preston would call him, the finesse basketball guy on there in the interior. So you had a good 4 guys there that you could go to. I don't know what we truly know about Monkel Goodwin right yet. And now you also get former 5-star, one of the top players in the country, Gabriel Brownlow-Dinley, who comes in. Both of those guys, at least right now, listed over 300 pounds. And that's another part to it is having bigger, heavier defensive linemen.
From a size standpoint, they obviously check that box of guys that are going to plug those holes and be able to, hopefully stuff runners. And again, with those guys, we rely on what they were thought of a couple of years ago when they were highly touted recruits. Again, Brownlow Dinley was a 5-star going to A&M and part of that great 2022 class. And then Monkel Goodwine, a 4-star at Alabama. And again, when Nick Saban thinks you're a good enough player, then that's going to give you a lot of credence coming into a place like Carolina. And now, again, they have the opportunity because, again, for Monkel Goodwine, he was behind a lot of experience last year, so getting on the field was obviously going to be tougher. Now the pathway's clear. Your opportunity to go out there and take one of these jobs is there. Can you go up there and do it? And when you get that job, can you go out there and perform to the same level is the question that we have about this group.
And I'll give this with Nick Barrett, who will be at SEC Media Days on Monday. You pull, I don't care what school they go to, but obviously more so if it's in South Carolina, you pull for these guys to succeed. He has stuck it out. He's part of the 2021 recruiting class that was the transition from Shane Beamer to, from Will Muschamp to Shane Beamer. I think it was only 7 guys in that class that ended up as part of the freshman class, and then they went to the transfer portal. One of those guys also being Colton Gauthier, for those that remember that name. But Barrett has hung around. He's listed at 6'3", 322 pounds, redshirt senior. He's out of Goldsboro, North Carolina. And this is a guy that you want to see have one of those magical senior seasons where everything comes together for him. And we're talking about him maybe being drafted in rounds 3 through 6 come next April.
Yeah, and he's obviously the ultimate team guy because he never transferred. And again, it was a good enough sport last year when it came to redshirt. And we're saying, hey, if you sit out this year or most of this year after playing a couple games, you'll get the opportunity to kind of get your chance to be one of the leaders on this defensive front the next season. And he was good with that. And again, never kind of strayed from the course of wanting to stay at Carolina. So you want to see a guy like that be rewarded for that patience. And again, we'll see if it happens.
803-404-6100. We'll come back, talk a little bit more about the stopping the run, because those 3 in particular are a big part of that. But there was 2 other guys last year that were massive, massive pieces to stopping the run. And then we'll move on to a guy one time that corrected me on his name in person.
Oh.
I'll tell you that story, and we'll talk about him. You're listening to The Halftime Show. Bill Gunner for Mid-State Roofing. That's right. You know this, and I know this. Leaks, well, they don't tell time. They just know that when your roof is starting to bother or get in a little bit of a bad spot, they just allow a leak to happen. So you don't want that to happen. What you want to do is called Mid-State Roofing, where for nearly 30 years, they have been the leader, the proven leader in the roofing and waterproofing industry. And it's that history that is your assurance that their professionals will provide the proper advice, service, and results to the needs of your facility. And importantly, they're going to do it in a manner both safe and pleasing to you and your operation. So give them a phone call today, 803-356-1919. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mid-State Roofing is ready to take your phone call. If you speak to them after hours, it'll be an on-call technician. During hours, a Mid-State Roofing employee. So just give them a phone call, 803-356-1919. That's how you can reach out. You know what they say. If you've got a leak, let Mid-State Roofing take a peek. We're rolling along on a Thursday morning. There's a mistake.
Yeah.
Thursday afternoon.
There's the first one.
That's the first one. Yeah. I was going to catch up with all this sleeping is catching up to me. Not remembering things.
Yeah.
More tired.
You can't have too much sleep. Like, that's a thing.
Yeah. I will go against you on that. I can. Because then I become all giddy and happy and excited, and then I start mispronouncing or saying things, and yeah, it doesn't. So I got to have a balance in there. We're working on that week.
Earlier you said it was mid-June.
I didn't even catch that.
Two mistakes. Yeah, you caught that one, huh? Feel free to jump in right now.
Yeah, I'll just write all these mistakes down.
Yeah, keep up.
Yeah.
We're
gonna start a jar, and every time it makes a mistake, he's got to put $1 in, and Dave gets it at the end of the year. How about that?
Sounds great.
Dave's going to be a rich man. It's going to be a happy Christmas for the Adair family. 803-404-6100. Reminder, if you can't listen to us, you're sitting at the office, boss doesn't want the radio on or the streaming app, don't worry about it. Go and watch us on the internet. You can go to YouTube where you can check us out, powered by Integrated Media and sponsored by Shepherd's Glass. You go to YouTube and look at the Game TV Radio. That's all you got to look at on YouTube, the Game TV Radio, and you can look at mine and Tyler's smiling face, and you can see Captain David here playing the air guitar when we come back with bumper music. Yep, there he is right now. So you'll be able to go and see that if you want each and every day. Just go to the Game TV Radio on YouTube. Talking a lot about the defensive line. Let me also say this. We're talking about the defensive line in terms of stopping the run. I'm going to carry this conversation over for a minute. I'm not sure. And I saw what we put on the rundown, and all of a sudden as I said this, I don't know what's more important, the interior defensive line or replacing Demetrius Knight and Debo Williams and Bam Martin-Scott.
Yes.
Because those are, yes.
The answer is yes. All those.
But no, I mean all three.
Yeah.
But you think about it, you're losing your interior guys. You lost your main 3 interior guys, and you lost your 3 main linebackers out there.
Well, and throw this out there as well. How about Nicky Manwari? Somebody that could come up and help and run support as well when needed to. You have a guy like Jalen Kilgore coming back that can also do those kind of things. But yeah, pretty much at all 3 levels of your defense, you've lost significant guys that came up and helped when it came to stuffing the run. And again, you're trying to replace those guys with some unknown commodities, especially in those first 2 levels. And talk about defensive tackle and linebacker that, again, we think they're going to be okay, but we're going to have to wait and see.
Oh, you're right. On paper, you go, man, Brownlow Dindy was a 5-star. Goodwin was a 4-star. There's a couple other guys. Xavier Hardy, as you mentioned, the top junior college recruit. You go, boy, that's 3 good ones to start with. And Nick Barrett's been around the program since the early 90s, I believe. So he's back. So, you've got guys you like, and I believe they've got one other, unless something's happened, I guess because he wasn't here in the spring. Troy Pikes, also from Georgia Southern, is set to enroll. So
yeah, I think he was a late addition.
Yeah, he's not on the spring roster list here, but certainly is a guy that you look at and say, okay, he could potentially help as well. But with all that being said, those linebackers, they might have been the most underrated players last year on the team when it came to big plays. I mean, yeah. I'm still shocked, by the way. I put a tweet out last night of Demetrius Knight picking off Cade Klubnik at the end, and I said in the tweet, I didn't take a shot at Clemson or anybody. I just simply said, hey, where were with you? Who were you with, and where were you when this play occurred? And in the tweet, I mentioned I was with a bunch of people, with someone at that time that was very special, and said I hugged everybody, and then I hugged her. We shared a kiss, and Clemson fans got very triggered last night by that.
It was a special moment. I mean, it's one of those ones that, especially given the context of what happened a few minutes before with Sellers, like, you remember where you were, what you were doing, and who you're with when those kind of things happen, because those are stories you're going to tell for years and years now when people say, hey, remember that Demetrius Knight pick that sealed that game against Clemson? Absolutely, I do.
But again, those linebackers were so good, and you look at it, and I think on paper, the talent, the potential to be good linebackers is actually higher.
Yeah.
Fred Johnson, Justin O, who, by the way, you'll learn, not even messing with his last name until I hear it.
Okoronkwo, I believe, is how you say it.
You keep practicing.
We had a phonetic written out somewhere, and then somebody threw it away.
But him, Jerron Willis has been here now for 3 years, and he was a 4-star recruit. Again, you kind of look through that board, and you go, okay, well, I like kind of what we're at, but they've got to go out and prove it. Freshman Donovan Darden was a guy who ended up being a 4-star who people really like.
Excitement about him.
So Josh Smith, another one from right here at Dutch Fork. They got bodies.
They do.
Sean Murphy is another one that comes over from Alabama through Alabama through Florida State,
yes,
to Columbia.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys there, but just a thought on that too that we'll get back into a little bit as we move forward. We talk about replacing the interior defensive line. Okay, But then you go and you look at those linebackers, and I think that's another part that we've got to really assess.
And again, you can't replicate the experience that you had in the middle of that defense last year with Debo Williams, who had been here for multiple years, Demetrius Knight, who I think was in his 5th or 6th year of college football, Bam Martin Scott, who had been around here for a while. They just played a ton of snaps, had a ton of experience. Not all here at South Carolina, obviously, but that's something that you just look at this room this year and say, you're just not going to have that, unfortunately.
And so that's another part of this defense. And as we get closer to Virginia Tech, as we get closer to, say, a Vanderbilt in week 3, obviously a week 4 against Missouri, a lot of things there from that. Moving on a little bit, Stephon Gilmore.
Yes.
We're patiently waiting to see if he's going to collect one more check, right?
Yeah, he said he's open to it, but has to be the right decision. But even if his career did come to an end right now, what a time in the NFL, and obviously what a time when he was here at South Carolina as well.
Well, I've brought it up before, and I think Preston and I had this discussion, and you'd have to think back a little bit, but does he have the best NFL career of any Gamecock? I say yes. I say yes.
I mean, and again, Sterling Sharp's career was cut short.
Good point.
It's certainly up for debate. There's no doubt about it.
I mean, you look at that's a great point. Sterling Sharp obviously going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame here shortly. But with that being said, is Gilmore a lock for the Hall of Fame? You would assume so, right? Is he right there on the border?
Defensive back can be tricky, but I mean the numbers are really good. Being consistent over a decade-plus long career is hard to do. He's played on obviously championship teams like with the Patriots. Like it's a pretty good resume. I'll say that much.
Super Bowl champion, NFL Defensive Player of the Year, 2-time first-team Pro Bowl, first-team All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowl, NFL interceptions co-leader during a year, 2019. Then you go through some of the Patriots awards. He won the All-2010s team and the All-Dynasty team.
Yep.
And then, of course, not that it would matter for the NFL Hall of Fame, but third-team All-American in 2010 and first-team All-SEC in 2010.
It's a pretty darn good resume. And when you talk over the past decade plus in the league, like who were thought of as the best guys at their respective positions at cornerback, like his name gets brought up. Like I think everybody kind of has a consensus. Like, yeah, Stephon Gilmore, maybe not the best in a given moment, depending on when you're talking about, but thought of as one of the best in the league overall in general. Which again, doing that over a long period of time is hard to do.
A couple of people weighing in. Clarence says John Abraham is close to being the best. That's a good point.
Yeah, very good career.
And then another texter here weighs in. Darian Stewart is a GOAT. And I think he means greatest of all.
Yeah.
Not actually.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and those are two good ones. I definitely would put Gilmore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Gilmore over Abraham is a very good one.
You know what's funny? Like, obviously, Clowney had the greatest upside of anybody that came out of Carolina and what he could have done in his career. And yes, did he necessarily live up to the billing of a #1 overall pick? Not necessarily, but he's had a good, very respectable career that 99% of people would kill for.
Yes.
But again, just like measuring up to being the #1 overall pick, maybe didn't quite live up to that.
Well, and also measuring up to what the product. I mean, you just think about the highlights. Hurdling the Georgia lineman to sack Aaron Murray in that 35-7 game. Obviously, there was some kind of play that took place at the Outback Bowl that people still keep referencing many years later. And then there was just other things he simply did. By the way, that Outback Bowl play, and I bring this up whenever I can because there's a part to that play that I don't think people realize.
Okay.
He's on the way, if it's not for Kelsey Quarles, and good job, Kelsey Quarles, for making the tackle. If it's not for Kelsey Quarles, if you go back and watch that play, Clowney is in the process of getting up to palm the football and take off for a touchdown, which would have made it the greatest play ever in the history of college football, where he knocks the guy's helmet off, causes a fumble. If you go back and watch it, he doesn't lay on Vincent Smith. He is getting up and is about to palm the ball when Kelsey Quarles basically falls on him and tackles him. Go back and watch that for a second and see that, because that would have had to go down as one of the. It goes down as one of the greatest plays ever.
That would have taken it into like another stratosphere of legend. Like you literally did it all yourself, with no help.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. But one story on Gilmore, and this is when I really got to know Gilmore might actually be really good because of how locked in he is. I'm up at the Shrine Bowl, and I'm interviewing him that week as to going to South Carolina and everything and what he's going to do and all this stuff and so forth. And I said, Stephen, or I said something. It wasn't Stefan.
Okay.
He stops the interview and corrects me and practices with me for like a minute and a half.
Stefan.
Yeah. And I just remember being like, huh, he's very serious.
He wouldn't even take like Steph as short.
Yeah,
It has to be
no.
Stefan.
And was obviously a great player.
He seems like a nice guy, though. We're like, he
very
wasn't like
respectful.
mean about it, but like, hey, let's get my name right, bud.
Very respectful, as opposed to Jadavian Clowney, who asked if I needed a step stool to interview him. I'm dead. That's a dead
Did he
serious.
really say that?
Yeah, we met in the Burns, not the Burns. We met in the South Point parking lot. And I had to interview him, and at that time I had to interview both of the Dixon brothers for I think 24/7 Sports. And Clowney gets out and takes one look at me and one look at the Dixons and one look at me and goes, "You gonna get a step stool to step up here and interview?"
Wow.
And I just like, what do you say? Like,
Yeah.
So when I saw him play basketball, I made sure to make fun of how awful he was at the game of basketball.
That's really funny.
Which he didn't need to be because he was really good at football. 803-404-6100. That's how you can weigh in if you want to do so this morning. We'll come back, wrap up hour number one. You're listening to the Halftime Show. 12:49 on a Thursday afternoon. Bill Gunner, Tyler Head, and Captain Dave Adair as we wrap up our number one. And a couple of y'all have weighed in so far this afternoon. One texter. I don't know if no, good career, not great. But another texter on basically who has had the best NFL career out of all Gamecocks. And one texter weighs in and says, I may be too young, but what about Sidney Rice?
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say the greatest.
Here, let me throw this out there.
All right.
Okay, and I'll put a poll out coming up in the next few minutes, just based on this little conversation. Whose career do you want more from the NFL? Whose career would you want more? Sidney Rice, Alshon Jeffrey.
Ooh. Because Rice never won a Super Bowl, did he?
No. And I want to say his career, I can't remember off the top of my head, I want to say his career was cut slightly short.
Let me see.
By an injury.
He only played 7 years.
Yeah, he I want to say got hurt, and I believe, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm about 98% on this, opened up, I think, a restaurant up in Seattle.
Yeah, only had 1,000-yard plus season. So, I mean, a respectable career, again, compared to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't put him up there in, like, the greatest in terms of played at Carolina and then moved on to the next level.
Yeah, Alshon with 475 receptions in his time. Obviously was a Super Bowl champion as well. And the only reason I bring it up, I think, and some of y'all can disagree with me, 803-404-6100, but I would assume it's a pretty easy decision. Again, I did not realize this until just now. As I get older, my memory fades. Sidney Rice won a Super Bowl
with.
I'm pretty sure it's with the Seahawks. I would almost pretty much guarantee.
You are correct. That was the last year of his career. Yeah. So he ended his career on that Super Bowl team. He only played half the season that year, and I don't have postseason stats. So he may have already been out by the time that Super Bowl got there. But yes, he was technically on the team. So yeah, they both have a Super Bowl ring, but I think Jeffrey's career was better overall, all things considered.
Rice had multiple concussions throughout his career. I knew there was some kind of neck, head injury. 803-404-6100 if you want to weigh in on that. I assume everybody would take. This is another hot take on the text line.
All right.
Sidney was better at South Carolina. I think he means. Weigh in, send this back in, text. I want to know more about this. He says Sidney was better at South Carolina, but Jeffrey had the better NFL career.
Okay.
I don't know if I would say that either. That's a great question if we get into a day where we don't have anything to talk about.
Alshon Jeffrey was pretty dang good here.
I mean, yeah, Rice was incredible. I'm not trying to both had incredible careers. This is one of those sports talk.
You're splitting hairs at this point between those two.
Grab your beverage of choice, come to the bar, and let's sit down and have a sports talk. Who is better at South Carolina, Sidney Rice or Alshon Jeffrey? I will say, who knows if Sidney sticks around one more year. Maybe it's an entirely different conversation. Sidney kind of bolting out after year two, essentially. Remember, he redshirted his first year, then played under Holtz there in year two, and then switched to Spurrier. But maybe that's a different thing. If you say Sidney played well, that's a great topic for conversation to come back to on some days here in the near future where we don't have as much, because I don't know who y'all would side with out there in terms of Sidney at South Carolina, Sidney Rice or Alshon Jeffrey. Texter again says Sidney was better at South Carolina, but Jeffrey had the better NFL career. Another texter weighs in on what we were discussing in terms of best NFL career. He or she goes with Stephon Gilmore. And another texter says, how about Deuce Staley? And should be reminded of all y'all, Deuce Staley, I believe, occupied this time slot.
Yes.
Within the last 15 years.
That was way before I got here, but yes, I believe that is
way
correct.
Before I got here. But Chad weighs in and says, how about Deuce Staley? Playing and coaching. That's good. KT from Lexington, trying to really mess me up here, says, good morning, Bill. Rice had a pretty good career also. Yeah, so
does he have to put $1 in the jar because he said morning?
I think KT has weighed in a long time. I think he is playing. I hope he's trying to goof with me. Donald weighs in and says Alshon's name is up top on the stadium. How much stock you put on that?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think that holds a lot of weight. By the way, I'd never seen him in person before until that day. My God, What a monster.
And he looked like that in high school.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I wouldn't want to defend that guy.
I'll never forget going to a Calhoun County basketball game for him and Shamir, and it was like a college player coming back to play against the JV team. I mean, he's just hulking large. So Greg weighs in. What about Jonathan Joseph's NFL career? That might be the comparable one for Stephon Gilmore. I don't. Joseph's not going to be an NFL a Hall of Famer, but who knows?
Yeah, it's a good debate to have. And I don't know. There's no wrong answer, I guess. It's whatever you feel like, but some solid candidates.
Oh, I tell you what, I'm going to put it out there. Whose career would you rather have, Alshon or Sydney? Because a couple of y'all are going with Sydney. Some of y'all have it.
Okay.
Because another person weighs in. Only one person's name is up in the stadium in lights. It's Alshon over Rice. So we'll let you
Fair point.
debate that out. Rice played 2 seasons and had 23 touchdowns in 2 1,000-yard seasons. We'll get into a lot of this a little bit. Hour 2 on the way. Bill Gunner for AAA Heating and Air. All right, have you looked at the weather? Are you paying attention at all? Or are you just out there trying to make it by each and every day? Well, if you haven't looked at the weather, it's going to be warm for several more days. And right now, you want to make sure your heating and air unit is working perfectly, not clinking and clanking, not making any sounds, and not keeping the house nice and cool. So if you have any issues, maybe you need to get a brand new heating and air unit, AAA Heating and Air can take care of that. They are the go-to name right here in the Midlands with guaranteed financing, no payments or interest for 12 months, and a 15-year parts and labor warranty. That is exactly why they are the best in the business. But maybe, just maybe, you only need repairs. Well, guess what? AAA Heating and Air has a phenomenal deal that you need to be contacting them on right now if you do need repairs. AAA Heating and Air, right now, if your system is broken and you're worried about the cost, they've got you covered. 12-month payment plans with no credit checks for all repairs. Just be a homeowner with a valid bank account. Give a phone call, 803-677-1500. Tell them Bill Gunner sent you. All right, we got some discussion going on
Yeah,
here.
you've hit the right buttons today, and you just busted your elbow.
Yeah.
Is that the funny bone?
Just missed it.
Is it funny?
Got it on the forearm.
No.
That's that's when you know you're getting older and less athletic. When you get injured doing a radio show, it's impressive on my part. I guess that's an afternoon thing. 803-404-6100. Yeah, we go. Okay. All right. Let's see where we go with here. Now, I put out on Twitter, because Deebo Samuel's career is not over.
Right.
Deebo Samuel, but right now I'm focusing strictly on wide receivers here. So, whose career would you rather have? College and pro. We believe, just blanking on if we still have the wrapping on the turns there at the stadium, on the walkways, where Sidney Rice's name is still up. And I kind of blank on that all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Alshon, that's a great point. His name is in lights up on the press box.
Yes.
Is that
Yeah, we had the honoring, 2 seasons ago now, where it's on the field. Yeah, I think Spurrier was there for it.
Yeah,
Again, yes, his name is cemented on the side of the stadium now. And Brad Rice has some records that are recognized, but it's not the same as what Alshon has.
Now, there is a caveat to this a bit. Sidney Rice had to retire due to injury, due to concussions. We've seen that a little more prevalent afterwards. Rice is only 38 years old, out of Gaffney. Still remember him watching playing the state championship for Gaffney and what he would go on to do. I believe, if someone can correct me, I believe that was against actually Somerville, and a wild play to end that game. But Rice comes to South Carolina. He finishes his NFL career with 243 receptions, 3,592 receiving yards, and 30 touchdowns. Alshon finishes his NFL career with 475 yards, 475 receptions, 6,786 receiving yards, and 46 touchdowns. Now, again, for Sidney Rice, or for Alshon Jeffrey, he played 9 years in the league. Last appearance in 2020. For Sidney Rice, he only played 6.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit of a difference there,
Yeah.
but obviously you can see the careers. Both won a Super Bowl.
Yep.
Both were very successful at South Carolina. A couple of y'all weighing in on that. Jay weighs in and says, put Sidney on the teams Alshon played on and the QBs he played with, do things change?
That's a good question.
So here's where I'll say yes and slightly no.
Okay.
Blake Mitchell was a really good quarterback.
Sure.
I won't go down this path today, but I think I could make the case that Blake Mitchell was one of the most underrated quarterbacks to ever come through the University of South Carolina.
All right.
Also had to coach, also got the gift to be coached by Steve Spurrier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The year before, in 2004, it was a disaster at quarter. You had Savell Newton, but nothing against Savell. But there was no continuity with what Holtz was trying to do with that team and how they wanted to go. Because that could have, you go back to that day, you go back to that season. That's coming off of the 63-17 Clemson loss, where Lou Holtz grabs Demetrius Summers over on the side at the end of the game. I don't know how much of this you know, and tells him he's taking over the offense next year, and he's demoting his son Skip, and so forth and so on. And they can't really figure out what they're going to run. He wanted to put Savell at quarterback that year. That didn't necessarily come to fruition in terms of what they wanted to do. I think they played Blake Mitchell a little bit that year.
Yeah.
It was an absolute kind of disaster. I believe. Somebody can correct me. I'm going to look this back up, but I believe in 04, Dontrell Pinkins also played some quarter. So there is a legitimate, hey, what if? And again, this is not a knock on Savell at all, because Savell was a good quarterback. I think he finally found his place in 2005 with Steve Spurrier. But there was that kind of question at that time: is what are you trying to accomplish here at the quarterback position?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fair point. And again, who's throwing you the ball certainly has an effect on the numbers that you're, that you're going to have. Because it would for Alshon would have been, was it Garcia all 3 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
okay.
well, yeah, I think it was Garcia all 3. I think Connor really took over the next year.
Okay.
For him. Getting older, Tyler. Starting to get things.
Yeah, that sounds right.
To go back, real quick,
No. So Connor Shaw was 2011. So his last year was when Shaw took over.
By the way, just to give you a note on that 04 season for Sidney Rice, and that year, the 04 season, or did I go to the wrong? Okay, because I tried to look this up here. Now it's not telling me what I think we should all know, which is how good Sidney Rice was in '04. Wait, did Sidney play '05, '06?
So he redshirted in '04.
Okay.
He played '05.
So he did have actually Blake Mitchell. For some reason, I was thinking, and I was right, but Blake Mitchell was the quarterback in 2005, the Spurrier year, and that's the year that Sidney goes fairly crazy, 70 catches, 1,143 yards, and 13 touchdowns, and follows it up. So to go back to that texter's point about put him on those teams, you could make a I could make a slight case. Blake Mitchell isn't worse than Steven Garcia.
These are those impossible arguments because there's no full way to prove it because it can't be done. You're just kind of cross-referencing here. But I mean, I see what people are bringing up. I get it.
A couple of y'all weighing in. Tommy goes with Bobby Bryant, who played for the Vikings in the late 60s and in the 70s, had a great pro career. Another texter says, give me Rice. Remember, Jeffrey had Garcia throwing to him the ball. Rice had Mitchell and Newton. Also, we had a better run game with Lattimore compared to the running game we had with Corey Boyd and Mike Davis 1.0. Good point on that. I take that. That's a good point.
Okay.
And then Chuck, I don't know what I'm allowed to say and not allowed to say between the 12 and 3 hours that I tried to avoid between 6 and 9 a.m.
I think it's a little more open. I don't know if we have as many kids in the car right now, though it is summer break, so I don't know.
There's a particular move that y'all are all aware of at the end of one of the Clemson games at Williams-Brice Stadium where Alshon caught a touchdown in the back of the end zone and did something kind of on the top of a Clemson player's helmet.
Yeah.
So
I get it.
And another texter weighs in and says, yes, Bill, preach. Blake is criminally underrated, and he also would take Rice over Jeffrey, both college and pro careers. All right, we might have to come back to this because we got a lot we want to get into today.
Yeah, I feel like we're going in circles now.
But it is interesting. I'm really surprised by how many of you are kind of weighing in with taking Rice over Alshon Jeffrey. Real quick, let me get to a couple of these. Also, one texter asks about Sheldon Brown.
Okay.
His NFL career as a defensive back against, say, a Stephon Gilmore or even a Jonathan Joseph with Pops Frisbee weighs in on his teammate, Jonathan Joseph.
Let's see. Take a look at Sheldon Brown's numbers.
Brown had good numbers, too, and I believe won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, or did they not win that year?
So he was on... No, they went to the Super Bowl.
They lost.
So
that was was that the Chad Johnson game where he comes back from the broken not Chad Johnson, Terrell Owens comes back from the broken leg and
I think so. Is this Patriots? That was 2004 because I think they beat the Falcons in the NFC Championship game that year.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was on a team that played in the Super Bowl, but never won the Super Bowl, and then ended his career in Cleveland. But yeah, I mean, numbers-wise, they are comparable, certainly, to Stephon Gilmore's and played a few less seasons. So Gilmore's got 32 interceptions. He's got 26 in 2 less seasons, essentially. So, again, kind of right there with each other in terms of, that kind of stuff. And, again, was all over the place, sacks, those kind of things. He was better getting after quarterbacks. He's got 8 sacks in his career. I believe Gilmore in the pros only has 1.
Oh, okay.
So he was used a little bit differently compared to how Gilmore was.
I've got a Twitter poll up. Tag Tyler in it. You can go to @Will, W-I-L, Gunter, G-U-N-T-E-R, if you want to participate there. Gamecock Bourbon Society weighs in. It says, tough question, but I'd take Sidney Rice. I'll be interested to see where we go.
Again, it's a good problem to have. I mean, however you feel, you're not necessarily wrong. It's good debate.
Well, and again, we will continue to put some stuff out like that. But I tell you what, coming up next, preseason conference polls. Well, the Big 12 has decided they're embarrassed. They're not going to have one. And South Carolina, do they finish are they rated preseason higher than they ever have been in the Shane Beamer era? We'll talk about that and get your thoughts on it as well. Again, if you want to weigh in, 803-404-6100. You can hit us up via the text line, or as always, you can hit us up via Twitter. He's at TylerHead18. I'm at Will, 1L, W-I-L, Gunter, G-U-N-T-E-R. If you want to weigh in on anything we're talking about, look forward to your participation, and we'll talk some preseason polls when we come back. You're listening to The Halftime Show. Bill Gunner for the Mortgage Guru, Jacob Crowder and First Palmetto Bank. It is that time of year where it's not just hot, but you also might be thinking about hot deals, like, getting or saving money on your mortgage payment. That's right. Maybe having a lower down payment, a lower monthly mortgage payment. So if you're thinking about building a home, buying a home, or most importantly, maybe refinancing, today is the day to call Jacob Crowder with First Palmetto Bank. Locally owned and operated right here in the Midlands, Jacob has quick and precise underwriting from local decision makers that can get you the answers you need in a timely fashion. So give Jacob Crowder a call today. 803-719-1005. Again, that's 803-719-1005. Call the Mortgage Guru, Jacob Crowder, today. If you're looking to refinance, build, or buy, he's the first person you need to call. Tell him Bill Gunner sent you. $1:15 on your Thursday afternoon. Getting
There
close.
it is.
Yeah, that was close.
I think the guy on the text line messed you up.
Yeah.
I will blame him.
KT from Lexington, a normal texter in the morning, but yes. And then texting me, good afternoon, about 20 minutes ago. 803-404-6100. So yesterday, or this week, it was Big 12 Media Day.
Mm-hmm.
Days, plural.
It was 2 days.
It was two, yeah. I saw this story come out about them skipping the preseason media poll.
Right.
I don't know what to think about this because it feels both cowardly and it also makes me think, well, their reasoning is somewhat understandable because last year the team that was picked to finish last, Arizona State, wins the conference. And you heard we played yesterday, Brett Yormark, basically saying we're the deepest conference in the country.
Yes. Now, deepest and most competitive are two different things. I do think, like last year, you're probably looking at the Big 12 and saying there's probably like 7 to 8 teams that could realistically win this conference. And last year, like all 7 of those were still in contention in the last couple weeks of the regular season. That Arizona State ended up winning the conference championship over Iowa State and playing in the college football playoff. And by virtue of AQ, what Arizona State was ranked didn't end up mattering. They got a top 4 seed overall anyway. But in terms of trying to get a second team, which again, Yormark said he thinks the conference is going to be able to do into the playoff, perception does matter a lot. And you're already at a distinct disadvantage being in the ACC and the Big 12 because the SEC and the Big 10 are so powerful. They're going to carry so much weight in these arguments in the committee room that unless you're like an undefeated or one-loss team in the Big 12, you have a hard time putting yourself above those teams from those other conferences. So I think even as minuscule as it may seem, even the perception of, I don't know, let's just say a Oklahoma State, who was a bad team last year. They went 3-9. Maybe are going to be picked towards the bottom of the conference if they had a conference poll this year, that them coming out of nowhere and being a surprise team, maybe that perception of what they were before the season per the media could skew the committee's view of them when it comes to ranking teams, and that could potentially cost you a team in the playoff. Maybe. Again, it's a long shot. It's very minuscule, but I see where they're coming from with this decision.
It's interesting. So let me ask you this. If Iowa State and BYU last year both won 11 games.
Mm-hmm.
Both won 11 games.
Yep.
If either team with their record is in the SEC or the Big Ten, do they get the benefit of the doubt and go in over somebody else?
Oh, undoubtedly. Like,
really?
If you're in the SEC and you win 10 or more games, you're in. Like, I don't think there's any debate about that unless you just have, like, I don't know if the math would work out this way. Unless you had like 7 teams that won 10 games, and okay, maybe we're getting a little too much. But again, we talked about Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama all being 9-3 and just missing the cut. If you change any of their records to 10-2, they're in. Right? If you change all the records to 10-2, I don't know if it would necessarily work out that way, but I would say you make a very strong argument those teams would be in, and the SMUs, the Indianas, might be on the outside looking in. So, yes, if you have a 10-plus win record in the SEC, I don't think there's any question that you're getting in the playoff.
That's a good point. Iowa State finished the regular season 10-2. They lost the conference championship game. Again, this is Iowa State to Arizona State. SMU was not penalized for losing the conference championship. Now,
Right.
if you want to be that person to go, Bill, SMU lost at the very end on a field goal.
Yep.
Iowa State got bludgeoned by Arizona State in the Big 12 championship, 45-19. Okay, I guess I can get that. But again, you go back and you look at the other team there, and again, that was BYU, who was rolling along, by the way.
Well, they were like 10-0, maybe 9-10-0. Then the wheels kind of fell off in those last couple weeks, but they looked like they were being positioned as the team to get in from the Big 12, and kind of fell apart down the stretch.
Yeah, and so anyway, you go to not doing a poll here, as you kind of felt like you might have been on the fence a little bit. Good idea, bad idea?
I mean, for what that conference is, I think it's a good-ish idea because it may potentially help you out down the road. I can't guarantee that. It may end up being a one-bid league again, and because again, I can't remember what Iowa State was ranked, but they were nowhere near the playoff, even if they made that a competitive game to be able to get in. It was truly, hey, winner goes into the playoff and loser goes to, well, I think it was the Pop-Tarts Bowl that Iowa State ended up playing Miami in.
Right.
So that could all end up being for nothing once again this year. But, yeah, hey, if you have a couple teams that are right there on the cusp and not having this perception going into the year that one team was going to be significantly worse than the others, could end up kind of swaying people's opinions when it comes to putting people in the playoff or not. And, again, I know it's a long shot, but it could be a thing. We'll see.
Again, BYU last year was also 10-2 and lost 2 games in November to Kansas and to Arizona State. But again, if they are in the SEC or the Big Ten, do they either of those 10-win teams get in? So I can understand where Brett, your mark is a little salty. This is actually, let's listen. This is going to be Kenny Dillingham. What was this, Monday? Is that right?
Tuesday. The first day. Yeah.
This is Kenny Dillingham talking about the Big 12 doing away with media polls.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to like this answer. I could care less, and I'd have no clue. I'm not a voter, and I don't really care where people put us. Vote us first, vote us last, vote us in the middle. If we're so focused on other people's expectations of us, then you're going to limit yourself. Who knows? Are we supposed to win 6 games? Are we supposed to win 9 games? Are we supposed to go undefeated? Are we supposed to win 0? Who really knows? All I know is when we show up to work, we should be the very best version of ourselves. And if we compete in something, you better compete to win. And you better compete to be the very best version of yourself every day, over and over again, and you block out the noise.
See, this is where I appreciate that answer.
Sure.
But don't you feel like any SEC coach would be like, they picked us last? I mean, I've heard Lamont Paris do this a couple times. Paul Maneri, like, hey, they picked us last. That's a chip on our shoulder.
I find it hard to believe that was not brought up one time last year when Arizona State, and again, they kind of surged towards the end of the year to make that run towards the playoff. I find it hard to believe that at no point last year they say, hey, remember, they said we're going to be the worst team in the conference. Like, that's the easiest bulletin board material we've ever seen. Again, you referenced Coach Paris and what people thought he was going to be in year number 2 that kept getting brought up over and over and over again. Like, that's classic, hey, guys, nobody thinks you're good enough. Go out there and prove them wrong. Like, I guarantee you Arizona State brought that up at some point last year. Now, again, when you're in the position of potentially being picked as the favorite, you can say those kind of things because you know, like, all right, we picked to be number 1. That's not really going to motivate my team very much.
No, unless again, what was it? It was Nick Saban. Rat poison.
Rat poison, yeah. They think you're great. You're not. Don't believe it.
That is actually the way.
Or if you can go the Kirby Smart route where you just block it off and convince them that people think you're going to go 7-5 when you're clearly not going to do that, that works too.
Yeah, that was his player there after they won the national championship. Said everybody doubted us.
That was Nolan Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, Nolan, man, that's not true.
Yeah, I don't know what you heard in your locker room or what you were not allowed to listen to outside of your locker room, but yeah. 803-404-6100 is how you can weigh in. Joe in Charleston says, number 1, so glad you guys are on 96.9 HD3 now in Charleston area. Stream is great, but just love pulling you up on the radio. Thank you, Joe. Glad to hear from you. First time, don't be long time. Keep on texting in. West Virginia, this is more from Joe. West Virginia with Coach Richard was picked last in the Phil Steele poll, but the portal, it's a lot harder to have knowledge of 16 teams packed, especially in a far-flung league from Utah to Central Florida.
Yeah, again, I think the Big 12 is the most wide-open league. And, yeah, could we be talking about Rich Rod returning to West Virginia and winning the conference? Maybe. Could we be talking about a team in Utah that was a disaster last year once Cam Rising went down? Maybe. Again, I'm so excited to watch it because I don't know what's going to happen, and that's what makes it fun.
Flipping over to South Carolina now, they go in as – are we still a darling? Are we still a darling, or at this point are we the annoying person who's on the outside yelling, look at us, look at me?
I think for the time being, you're a darling. Again, my gauge of where you stand in the conference is how much you get talked about at media days, especially when you're speaking on Monday, because Beamer and company came in last year. They spoke, and nobody cared about them for the rest of the week.
Right.
This year, they're going to speak, and people are going to be talking about them and being asked, hey, what do you think about that South Carolina game? Oh, you guys got to go to Williams-Brice Stadium. What do you think about that? You're relevant more now this year than you were a year ago, which is something.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So do we do it way too early? You won't be here tomorrow. You'll be on the morning show. Tyler will be on the morning show tomorrow, and I'm working on a lineup for tomorrow afternoon. But since you won't be here, do we go ahead and take our? Well, it won't be till next Thursday. I think I got to have the vote in. You have to have your vote in by Wednesday night, I believe.
Yes,
for a
I think
preseason
so.
media poll. So Tyler will skew it. He'll be the one person who picks Vanderbilt to win the conference. Like happened.
Somebody has to be different, right?
Yeah, that was. And boy, when that happened a couple years ago in Birmingham, you'd have thought, there's you'll meet them, the all serious team of media members. I can't believe somebody did that. They're just taking away from the credibility of the media. I'm like, guys, settle down.
Some people take media days too seriously. My buddy that I worked with in Athens once won the award for worst question asked of the year because he asked Josh Dobbs something about aerospace engineering.
I remember that one.
Which he actually enjoyed answering the question about. But I don't know, whoever puts out the worst question of the year, he won that award that year.
So you want to take a projection?
I got to really sit down and think about it. Like I don't. This isn't going to be like an on the fly thing in my head.
All right, let's move it up one from the middle of the conference.
Okay.
Or move it up a half. Over 7.5, under 7.5. Does South Carolina get into the top 7, or do they finish middle of the conference? Or I say finish, and this isn't, again, if you're just tuning in, this isn't as it pertains to where they finish. It's where are they projected next week when the SEC media poll comes out, unless Greg Sankey, and I don't put it completely past him, is coming out on Monday and say, we're not doing a media poll this year.
I feel like, for one, Greg Sankey wouldn't fall in line with something the Big 12 did first. I feel like he'd be like, no. I feel like
he's going to send out 2 polls.
He's going to make a point in his, 20-minute opening statement about, well, we like to have our media decide who the best and who the worst teams are, and we like to go out there and prove it on the field too. Like, he's going to have some kind of dig at Brett Yormark about that, because again, these commissioners just get into what kind of contest when it comes to these media days. But I would project South Carolina probably going to be in the top 7, I would think. Because when you look at the history of the Beamer era, at least, it's always very reactionary to whatever South Carolina did the year before. That's usually about the place they get put in the next year's media poll. Like, people just kind of assume they're going to be the same thing they were the year prior in good seasons and bad.
803-404-6100. So we'll have that answer for us. Do we get, all right, real quick, do we get the answer for where South Carolina ends up, which will be Thursday?
Yep.
Or do we have the Rasul Faison news?
Yeah, it's probably going to be media poll first.
Media poll first.
Which, by the way, for reference, South Carolina finished 6th overall in the standings last year in the SEC. So, again, probably going to be around there, I would imagine, in the overall media poll.
Texas, Alabama, Georgia. They're going to have LSU ahead of them.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd put Tennessee ahead of them this year because quarterback thing.
All right. Florida, Ole Miss. Oof. Florida, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, South Carolina.
They're all kind of right there together.
Do you throw Missouri in there with them? Or is Missouri?
I think Missouri probably take a little bit of a step back.
Okay. All right. We know Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State will take down 16, 15, 14. Arkansas probably at 13. I'm just doing this very randomly, very quickly. So that's 12. So then that would have left you the other teams I just rattled off. I can see Missouri at 11.
I'm curious how high people put Vanderbilt, given the upset last year, the Pavia factor. Like, is there going to be that kind of that darlingness to them of like, hey, this team could be special this year before they go 2-10 or something?
I don't see them getting higher than 12 because I left off Auburn out of that big list I just gave, and nobody's going to, even though Vanderbilt beat Auburn last year.
They did.
Pavia's back.
Pavia's never lost to Auburn, no matter how many schools he plays them at.
Yeah, that's a good point. Real quick, Pavia, the most interesting guy next week.
Oh, I'm excited to hear from him because he's going to give us something, some kind of zinger.
Yeah.
Because I kind of looked at the list of guys that are going to talk, and I don't know. Like, Arch Manning's interesting, sure, just because of who he is, but like guys that I think could give us like good quotes, like Pavia's at the top of that list.
803-404-6100. He's Tyler Head. I'm Bill Gunner. Captain Dave Adair behind the producing window. You're listening to the Halftime Show. 1:34 on your Thursday afternoon. Tyler Head, Bill Gunner, Captain Dave Adair. Let me remind you, our craft beer card now just $59. The summer craft beer card. You can save up to around $300. Go to 1075thegame.com, click on Sweet Deals, and purchase your summer craft beer card again, just $59. And again, all you got to do is go to 1075thegame.com and click on the Sweet Deals tab for that. Yeah, the poll question, very, very interesting. Some of the poll guys in this, well, they're very interesting, especially in the Big 12.
Yep.
Where colleges are looking back out to rekindle a little bit of magic that was created, Tyler Head.
Yes. So you have two instances of guys returning to their former stomping ground. Scott Frost going to UCF and Rich Rod returning to West Virginia. Of course, you would say in the history of both those programs, some of their best years came with those guys. UCF's national championship in 2017, and those Rich Rod teams in the mid-2000s that were, winning Big East championships, nearly made the national championship in 07 if they didn't lose the backyard brawl versus Pitt. Again, with that crazy innovative offense, like they were at the respective heights of their conferences 10 to 15 years ago.
Right.
This is now 2025. I don't know if that's going to guarantee success or not.
Well, let's go through some retreads.
Yes.
You have real quick. I've got one as I studied and looked. Did I miss one that is more successful than Mac Brown?
Well, Mac Brown wasn't all that successful in that second tenure, all things considered.
Things fell apart last year.
He fell apart last year. So
did they fall apart?
And I wanted to look at this in a more modern sense. So I've gone since the year 2000.
Okay.
Also, I have the parameters. I don't look at people like Don Brown was at UMass when they were FCS and came back when they were FBS. That's the transition.
Right.
You're not going to have the same success. So I'm just looking at purely since the year 2000, coaches that have coached two different stints at FBS schools.
Okay.
We have 9 of them. Gary Anderson at Utah State, Chris Alt at Nevada, Mac Brown at UNC. Now, again, he was there prior to 2000, but came back a couple years ago.
Right.
Randy Edsel at UConn, Brady Hoke at San Diego State, Bobby Petrino at Louisville. I remember how that went. Mike Riley at Oregon State, Greg Schiano at Rutgers, who's still there, and then Jeff Tedford at Fresno State. He just ended his time there back in 2023. So out of all these,
I think you missed a big one there, actually, that I'd forgotten about.
Which
Or
one?
I don't think I was looking. Greg Schiano? Did I hear that?
Yeah, Greg Schiano.
Did you? Okay, all right.
And he's the only one that is still at that school as of now. So the full book on his second tenure is yet to be done.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I went back and looked at winning percentages, looked at what they accomplished, bowl victories, conference championships, and all those kind of things. And it kind of spit out a couple different things here. 6 of the 9 coaches had a worse winning percentage their second time around, Mac Brown included in that. And 2 of those coaches, in Mike Riley and Brady Hoke, only had 2 seasons in their first stint. So we didn't get like a long, amount of information about them in their first time there to really kind of gauge how good or bad they were before they went and took other jobs. Also, 6 of the 9 never posted a better record in their second time around at their respective school. Riley and Hoke were 2 of those guys that did, but again, their first 2 tenures were just kind of okay. Mike Riley's was really weird at Oregon State because he wasn't really that great before he took a different job and then came back and was better. But again, the first couple years weren't all that great. So I think that's kind of apples to oranges compared to the other 2. But for the most part, when you go back to your school, you were expected to be worse than you were the first time, mostly.
Yeah, I didn't realize the Bobby Petrino one in particular jumps out. 82% win percentage.
It was
first time.
Yes.
58.1.
Yep.
Second time.
That first tenure won 2 Big East championships, 2-2 in bowl games. Second time around, never played for a conference championship and was 1-3 in bowl games. And again, he had Lamar Jackson that second time around.
I was going to say the second time, I feel like that 58% there is pretty much all of.
Well, Lamar Jackson was about all that team had.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The one that I'll be intrigued with was what I was looking at. I must not have heard you say, but Greg Schiano, because I feel like that program is improving right now.
It is,
and he's at what I'm reading is 50.4% win percentage first time, 43.3% right now as things stand, and he's only 54, by the way.
Yeah, and again, they were in the Big East the first time around. They're in the Big Ten now. That's obviously more of a challenge, but like Rutgers was literally in the basement of the Big Ten before he came back, so he has turned that program around significantly and gotten them more competitive, but we don't think of them in the same breath as the Ohio States and the Penn States, and I don't know if we ever will necessarily, but he's done a good job of at least making them more relevant than they were. But again, compared to the success the first time around, it's not quite what it was.
Well, but again, as you just said, you went a little bit of a step up. I'm trying to remember who was in the Big East the first time he was there.
So that would have been the OG Big East. You know,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
West Virginia, South Florida, Miami had already moved on to the ACC at that point in time. Pitt, teams like that.
Yeah, I'll pull that. I'll pull that back up here in just a second because to your point, it was. I'm trying to remember there was a Thursday night game up there in Piscataway where ESPN was in, and it was the year that Rutgers was really. Now I want to say it was one of the first years that Louisville and Rutgers were like great. They played up there.
It was, I believe, that crazy 07 season where I think Rutgers got maybe all the way up to number 2. Remember, 2s kept losing that year.
Yeah,
and I think Rutgers or Louisville is one of those 2s that I believe lost at some point that season.
Yeah, well, I want to say actually what you might be thinking about is South Florida.
I think it was South
Florida. Remember, got all the and that was 07 because that was South Carolina got up to number 6 before losing here at home to Vanderbilt.
We almost had a West Virginia and Missouri national championship, or Missouri or Kansas, one of those 2 teams. I think it may have been Kansas because whichever one lost in the rivalry game in the last week nixed any chance they had of playing for the national championship, and then West Virginia lost the backyard brawl to Pitt because they didn't have a conference championship game. They were just walked right into the BCS national championship, and they blew that.
Yeah, I remember that. That was Pat White was the quarterback for West Virginia at that time.
And again, that was back when Rich Rod had that innovative offense that nobody could figure out because it was up tempo, it was fast. They were running 90 plays a game. Him, Steve Slayton, all those guys, you just couldn't slow them down. Well, now everybody does that. Now everybody's caught up to you. So, okay, how successful is that going to be your second time around? We'll see.
803-404-6100 if you want to weigh in. We have discussed a good bit here so far through a little over 2.5 hours. We'll come back. We'll get into a little bit of baseball discussion. Robo-umps. Well, how would have a robo-ump handled Kevin Schnall in Coastal Carolina in the College World Series?
Well, you would have at least been able to argue it.
We will touch on that when we come back. Also, give you an update. We got our poll out there on Twitter at TylerHead18, at Will Gunter, WILGUNTER, and we will give you an update. What does everybody think about? Which career would you rather have, Alshon Jeffrey or Sidney Rice? We'll come to that when we return. You're listening to The Halftime Show. 146 on a Thursday. Tyler Head, Captain David Dare, Bill Gunner, as we work our way through hour number 2. Been a lot of discussions so far about polls, preseason polls, Tyler. And Jay from the Interstate says, hasn't it been argued polls shouldn't be released until 4 to 6 weeks into the season? Media polls are useless.
Ideally, yeah, because then you'd actually have the sample size of what you've seen from a team after basically a month of the season to rank them accordingly there. But we just can't seem to live in a world where teams don't have numbers next to their names for those first 3 to 4 weeks. So I don't see that going anywhere.
Well, I agree with what you said there. I will say this. The people that are doing this should have what I'll say common sense.
Yeah.
Like, but here's I think the problem we have. We don't like looking at Georgia Tech beating Florida State in week 1, and we say, oh, massive victory, huge upset. And
based on what?
Yeah, well, exactly, and that's what I was going to go with. Yeah, because all of a sudden we get to week 5 and Florida State's 1-4 and lost to who knows what else.
But by the way, Georgia Tech parades that as I think they were 5th, right? A top 5 victory. Hey, we beat a top 5 team. Yeah, they ended up being 2-10, but they're still top 5 when we played them.
That's right.
But according to the AP poll.
Yeah, well, let the school do that. But what I was going to say is you win that game. Apparently we don't have the ability to look at it 5 weeks in and be like, oh, let's readjust this. Georgia Tech is 5-0, but now that Florida State, we got to drop them down a little bit.
Sure, and that's why, people get really upset sometimes when there's massive swings in the polls where a team goes from like 20th all the way up to like 8th. And I'm like, well, hey, if there's a significant victory and it warrants you changing your opinion on them that much, like, I'm cool with that. But it's simply like, wait a minute, they can't jump over all these teams. Who says they can't? You know what I mean? Like, it's this artificial system we've created, so why can't it be that chaotic?
And that's where I think the polls are a slight problem because, again, if you're ranked in the top 10 and you're eking out victories each and every week,
you're still winning, but
you're still winning. But then there might be teams who have picked up 2 great wins along the way who weren't ranked, and you're like, well.
Think about this. We used to decide national champions this way. We used to before sports TV was a thing, we used to let writers in California that never watched Florida State play tell us how good Florida State was.
Not only that, but you had, I won't blame that completely because of was it Michigan, Nebraska? I think it was Michigan, Nebraska in 96, I want to say. Michigan went out and beat Washington State in the Rose Bowl. I think this was 96, Charles Woodson and Ryan Leaf. And I think it was Miami. I want to say it was Miami or somebody else that obviously because Michigan had to go to the Rose Bowl because of a tie-in, couldn't go play. I believe it was Miami. I could be wrong on that.
But I love talking about postseason formats. I could talk about it all day long. Don't get me started on the Rose Bowl always being the problem child when it comes to figuring out how to do these things right. They're always in the way.
I have just learned.
Always in the way.
I have just learned if I need to run to the bathroom or get a drink, I'm just going to tee Tyler off right there with, hey, what do you think about this? And then run down to the vending machine, and I'll come back, and he'll be just pounding the desk and yelling into the mic.
I will take up plenty of time doing that. Don't worry.
So we've talked about that. KT from Lexington, this gets this right. Good afternoon, Bill. Okay, that's better. He says that the Gamecocks will likely be picked 8th in the SEC polls.
Okay,
media polls.
About where I would assume they'd be.
Truthfully, I think what you said earlier, you're going to have Texas. I think we'll see if this comes to true. Write this down. Texas, Georgia, and I'm going to go LSU as your top 3. Because LSU has a returning quarterback and Alabama doesn't.
I could see that. Yeah, I think that's fair.
And Georgia, I know Gunnar Stockton made his first start last year in the bowl game, but against Notre Dame. But I'll go with those 3. After that, truthfully, I know Alabama's loaded with talent. I got it. But I think you throw Alabama, you throw South Carolina. Until I'm proven otherwise, I'm going to throw Mississippi and Tennessee in there. Texas A&M in there. I know these are good teams. That takes me to 8 right there. People are talking about Florida and Auburn. Now I'm at 10.
Sure.
And I feel like I'm leaving someone out.
Yeah, I think was that 7 teams?
That was 7 that you throw in a bag, pull them out, and whatever.
If you gave me any combination of those teams in your essentially 4 through 10 spots, I'd believe it. Like, okay, I could see that.
Yeah, and if we're just doing this very quickly, I would leave Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Missouri, and I'm blanking on one more. as we go through that list. But yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
what I think for that.
I think that's fair.
803-404-6100. So, All-Star game. Now, I like this.
All right.
But I only like it because it's the All-Star game.
Yes.
Only because it's a game that really it keeps my attention for about 5 to 6 innings. Now it might keep mine a little bit more. All-Star game is going to use the automated robot system.
Yes, the balls and strikes. So you can now, if you're not pleased with the ball that you think is out of the zone, you can tap on that helmet, get a review.
That's going to be a long All-Star game.
Not really, because this is something, each team has 2 challenges, and you only get to keep the challenge if you win. And it's something, when you call for it, when you tap on your helmet, and there's, I think the pitcher taps on their head or something like that if they don't like the call, they flash it up on the screen, and, again, you have the square strike zone. It'll show where the ball is, and it'll show if the umpire got it right or wrong. I think these reviews are going to go by literally in seconds. I don't think it's actually going to slip, because we get used to the reviews, especially in college baseball. All right, we've got a review from South Carolina. Now let's all go run off the field. Let's go put on the headset, talk to somebody in Birmingham for 5 minutes to see if so-and-so is out at first base. I don't think it's going to be like that.
I am intrigued. I do think there has to be a human element to sports. I also think that umpires, referees, whatever, should have to face the media afterwards.
Yeah, 1,000%.
The fact that
give us something.
What was Angel's last name there against Coastal?
Hernandez, not Hernandez. His middle name's Hernandez. I forget his last name now.
Something with a C, Cabrera, or something like that. That dude had to face the music for throwing Kevin Schnall out. Now he might have a legitimate reason. He might not, but he should have had to face the media. But I do think we got to have a human element. Balls and strikes are what they are. I mean, here's what we talk about. Did you see? And this is an art form. I get it. I never did it. I never played catcher. Couldn't keep my eyes open when the batter swung and the ball came in. But did you see the graphic during the College World Series of the Coastal catcher who led the nation in knowing how to frame pitches to get the strikes?
Caden Bodine, was that his name? He was good at it because, again, that you can get so many calls that way because ball's out here, I move it right here. And, again, that half second, you're hoping that you trick the umpire's eyes into thinking the ball was here instead of out here.
Yeah, and so are you for the – and I don't mean for the All-Star game, I'm all in. I want to see what happens. Yeah. You've convinced me now that the game will be quicker because of this. But are you – if they were to go to this in the regular season, you taking it or passing?
I'm taking it because I think it forces umpires to be better.
Okay. But they're gone no more. No longer are they trying to be better.
Well, here's the thing. The physical umpire themselves is still going to be there. That's not going away. And I don't think the umpires union would allow them to go away. So this is just a way to keep them in check, right? And again, we've had some horrendous umpires. I mentioned Angel Hernandez a moment ago. It's funny he retired before this ever became a thing because he would be getting called out left and right for how bad his strike zone was. But I think it forces them because having this on the big screen and on TV, you're basically shaming them in front of everyone. Nobody wants to be publicly shamed like that, so maybe this will get them on their P's and Q's of getting the balls and strikes right now. Well, they're not always going to get it right, but maybe they'll be a little bit better.
So, to go back to this, what you're saying here is the automated system is calling the game, though.
So the umpire is calling the game. The automated system's always there.
Oh, okay.
And if I'm the batter and there's a ball outside the zone that gets called a strike, I tap on my helmet, we go to the big screen, and it's going to show where that ball was, and it's going to tell you if the umpire was right or not. That's how this works.
I just wanted the automated umpire to be Frank Drebin. And when it goes in and it alternates, when it changes a call, I want the little robot. I know y'all can do this. I know y'all can do it. Yeah. I want the automated umpire to stand up and dance around and do a split, Frank Drebin style, Naked Gun. We'll come back. Hour 3 is on the way. We'll get back into a little bit of discussion on some baseball as well as professional stadiums. What do you prefer? 2 o'clock is your time here on the 10th of July. Remember, big recruiting day tomorrow for South Carolina. Tomorrow night, 7:30. Samari Smoke Matthews set to make his announcement, basically down to South Carolina and or Texas. And this is a highly rated player. This is a guy that is a very good defensive back out of the Charlotte area. And as Tyler and I talked about it earlier this week, these are the kind of recruiting battles you have to start winning. You can't just simply say, well, we went against Texas, we went against Georgia, we went against, I'm trying to think of where the other young man just committed that South Carolina lost out on last week. But this is a recruiting battle that the Gamecocks need to win. You can never have enough defensive backs. You can never have enough talent back there. And the job that Torian Gray has done building that secondary, you get another talented player in there, South Carolina can really continue to build what they need to do in the back half of the defense. We've talked about the front of the defense already today as well, the defensive line. And, Tyler, again, no defensive lineman right now really on the radar, but you can always use the transfer portal.
Sure.
And there'll be a lot of people out there go like, I don't care about defensive linemen until next year. Put that off there. We got to have them this year. Well, that's what we were talking about in terms of, okay, what do they have to replace the mega trio? But also, I think you can go to also adding DeAndre Jules in there as the fourth guy who was able to provide snaps.
And I think that's kind of part of the excitement of something like this in today's era of college football is there's going to be guys on this team that we're not thinking about they're going to pop and do something amazing. Again, Demetrius Knight, when we looked at him last year coming in, he's like, yeah, his numbers are fine. He seems like he's a perfectly capable player at linebacker. We never foresaw what he did and getting himself drafted, to the Bengals, this past year. Like, there are going to be guys that really wow us with what they do on the field, and hopefully there's going to be some of those guys in the middle of that defense there up front on the, defensive line, like a Goodwine, like a Brownlow Dinley that, again, we only kind of have to go off what they were in high school when it comes to setting expectations, and hopefully it's good. So we'll see. And, again, it's something that's going to evolve, and not only for us watching it, but I think for the coaches as well in terms of how they utilize these guys as the season goes along. Yeah,
you make a good point about Demetrius Knight, who last year we kind of looked at it and was like, oh, he's fast.
Yeah.
Was he good? No, he's fast.
Which he was fast in the American Athletic Conference at Charlotte. So it's like, okay, was that translate over to the SEC? And it definitely did because he was all over the place.
Yeah, I get. Yeah. Well, how good is he? I don't know, but he's fast.
Yeah. Okay. That's the starting point.
And he played quarterback. He must be faster.
Sure.
He wasn't originally a linebacker. So you're right. Somebody will step up, and maybe in time we'll have that poll question up as to who. Do you expect out of, and I don't want to say list of no names, but who do you expect to step up and have that kind of season, much like Demetrius Knight and even Adebo Williams had last year? So we talked a little bit about that. We've also talked a little bit about the run game for South Carolina. Rasul Faison. All right, it's 2:03. Faison Watch 2025 still ongoing. Nothing from yet. Tyler is now of the opinion, and I'm kind of with him on this. I'm growing more and more with the decision that we're not going to get it until mid-August when South Carolina will have had to waste several practices, either not giving him reps or giving him reps that should have gone to somebody else.
There's also the distinct possibility as well, and this was wrote about, I think, on Gamecock Central by Kevin Miller a couple weeks ago, that, he was at least looking into the NFL supplemental draft, if they have that this year, which they don't have every year, and also maybe jumping into somebody's camp and trying to make a roster that way. Because, again, he thought maybe he was going to have to try the NFL route after the end of last season, but saw a pathway via Diego Pavia to come back to college, which is why he's here at South Carolina. But he could come to a decision soon. We're like, hey, I don't think this is going to happen. I'm just going to go try my hand at the next level.
According to the internet, we all know what's on the internet has to be true.
Sure.
But actually, this is according to The Athletic. The NFL will not hold a supplemental draft here in 2025.
Okay.
The last time there was a supplemental draft was in 2019, so that would not be an option.
So, yeah, he would have to – and apparently there were NFL teams that showed interest. And again, they're always looking for camp bodies, right? So, hey, come to camp. Try and make the roster that way. Again, if it doesn't seem like the eligibility thing's going to happen, that may be his only option to continuing his career.
And so we've talked about that. And again, I'm kind of now starting to take a different perspective on this where, yes, Rasul Faison is getting kind of worked over in this situation. But the more we've talked about it, Tyler, the more I've come to realize the pressure on South Carolina football this season, if you are of the belief like me that rosters are now year to year to year, that when you look at it, now and you go, all right, Lenore Sellers could be off to the NFL draft next year. Hypothetically, Dylan Stewart could be off to Alabama or Penn State for his final year of college. Josiah Thompson, who knows if somebody wants a big-time left tackle there to go and try and get in the let me be clear about this, in the NIL portal.
Yes.
Which is, there are guys who are like, I can't play here. I'll go to the portal, and somebody, Monkel Goodwine. Nothing against him, but Monkel Goodwine is like, this isn't an NIL thing. I just want to play somewhere and get a fresh start.
Sure.
But Josiah Thompson is one of those guys. Who's to say that Nick Harbor doesn't have a fairly good season and somebody's like, all right, you need one more year. You kind of,
heck, if he's good enough, he could go pro.
that
Been
too.
here for 3 years.
So you could lose a lot of pieces. And the reason that all of a sudden I think now the pressure is ramped up is because you have a roster that in this day and age of college football, you have to strike while the iron is hot. You can't look back at this roster and be like, man, what did we lose there? Because you could go, have you been through a Will Muschamp roster a couple times where you looked and you're like, how in the world did this roster put up that record?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I think we may have talked about this the other day, but every team has windows, right? I look at Ole Miss as a prime example, and I think most of us were penciling them in to be a playoff team a year ago, and they lost a couple games. They had no business losing to the likes of Kentucky and Florida, and that's ultimately what kept them out. Again, we saw how talented that team was when they came in here, and again, all the talent that they paid for and all that kind of stuff. So my question for somebody like them is, did their window close after 1 year because a lot of that talent, including your quarterback, is now gone? I think they're going to be good, but I don't know if they're going to be playoff good. And for Carolina, given the mix of guys that we didn't have the necessarily same expectations going into the season that Ole Miss did when it came to the roster, ended up being really, really good. It's like, okay, was that a 1 year thing, or is that something that's going to translate over into this roster as well, and this becomes a consistent thing? Or, is Carolina going to go 6-6? We're going to go, man, if you hadn't lost that game against LSU, and we all know why that happened, you could have been in the playoff, because you never know when you're going to get back to being anywhere close to that.
Yeah, and that's why I say it. I mean, neither of us are sitting here saying, if Shane Beamer goes 7-5 or 5-7, he's going to get fired. But it is a momentum thing about keeping your roster and everybody moving forward. You go 5-7, some guys might look around and be like, I don't see a good culture here. I don't see this. I don't see that. Let me go try the portal. Some, again, might even have a school. Dylan Stewart, I'm looking at you. Might have a Penn State or Alabama go, really? It's your final year of college. You want to play a championship, or what do you want to do?
As we know, he was getting offered a lot very quickly based on how he was playing. And, we said South Carolina's number one priority was getting him back in the fold, which they did. But all that stuff's going to start once again this year of, hey, especially if Carolina's not playing well, like, hey, man, you really want to end your career there? Why don't you come up to, like I said, Penn State or Ohio State, and we'll make it worth your while and play on a championship team.
We'll give you enough money, you can buy a bunch of heated blankets. Don't worry about the cold.
Don't worry about the cold.
You're good about it. So, anyway, that's the football, kind of the South Carolina football update for the day. Also, we were talking a little bit about the media polls, the Big 12 eliminating their media poll, and one of the questions is, what value does a media poll actually hold?
I'd say for the purposes of talking, a lot, because it gives us something to talk about. Like, hey, here's what people think about South Carolina. Here's what people think about Bama or Vanderbilt or whatever it may be. But when you get into the season, outside of those teams that can use it as bulletin board material, we never really talk about it. Like, again, unless you're that team that was picked last and you say, hey, it's a rallying cry that thought we were going to be dead last and we're winning because of it, like, it doesn't really hold a lot of weight.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The only reason polls are relevant, again, is for what I feel like is, I don't know if uneducated is the right word, but I feel like we can all watch football and be like, Georgia Tech beat Florida State. All of a sudden, Florida State doesn't look quite as good as we initially thought. That win is, sure, it's nice, but no, it's not the same. You go back to last year. Florida State loses to Georgia Tech, Boston College, and Memphis right off the bat. At that point, on Sunday, September the 15th, we should have all woke up and been like, I don't think this Florida State team is very good. Time to bump Georgia Tech back down a few notches, because that win is not what we thought it was.
Right, and again, that carried the weight of what we thought of Georgia Tech for a while. Like, hey, man, remember they beat a top 10 team? Well, actually, they didn't, and they did end up beating a Miami team later on in the season. But, yeah, it creates this skewed perception of what teams are, and it does eventually, carry over into the playoff rankings too, because a lot of the playoff rankings reflect where the AP poll is at that point in time. So, yeah, if you're a team that was unranked going into the season and maybe you're undefeated, but they only got you 22nd, that can affect your chance of getting in the playoff because of where you stand.
So we've talked a little bit about that. The Big 12 nipping in the bud their preseason media polls. South Carolina will learn their placement in the SEC preseason poll next week. KT from Lexington weighing in and saying he projects 8th. So we'll have to see kind of what that ends up being. And this is where I kind of, again, as we kind of broke it down, this is the other thing I think you got to look at when you have a preseason poll. Who are all the programs that look genuinely the same?
Sure.
Like, who are – earlier we did it. I think and I probably will narrow it down. Texas and at LSU at 1 and 2. Maybe have Georgia and, I might be just Georgia at 3 in a separate tier. Mm-hmm. And then we mentioned 6 or 7 teams that go into the next tier. So if you're picked 10th or if you're picked 4th, you kind of like, well, we'll figure this out in the next couple of weeks.
And that's kind of always been the case with the SEC is that middle ground, right? That anywhere between like 4 to 10, 11 or whatever. That's just always kind of like a mixed bag every single year where one team kind of jumps up into that top 5 or another team may fall down to that 10 or 11. And it just kind of fluid. It just kind of fluctuates. So Carolina's kind of existed in that for a while now. And again, anywhere between that like 5th to 8th, maybe 9th, if people are really down on them, I could see it happening.
And I also feel like this is a cop-out of the media. I mean, Tyler, in our industry, sometimes you got to be willing to say, I'm not a very smart man. I don't know what I'm doing. Mike Gundy trying to get comfortable with people thinking he's not very smart. Here's Mike Gundy yesterday at Big 12 Media Day.
So one advantage I had, I've done this a long time, and so I'm to a point now I can take the pride out of it, and I'm willing to look and say, you know what, that was my fault.
Yeah.
And I when we let go of Brian Nardo, our defense coordinator, I told him, I said, look, half of this is my fault. Unfortunately, I have to make a change.
Yeah.
And so in having that experience, I can take a step back. It gives me a chance to identify things we need to correct and then how to go about it. So you learn to grow. I really believe this, that it takes about 10 years, in my opinion, to become a good head coach, where you can ride the wave and be comfortable in an uncomfortable situation.
Right.
So, like, I have to be comfortable with people thinking I'm not very smart. Why did you do that? Why'd you hire that guy? That was a terrible play call, because that's the way it works in big-time college athletics.
I feel like in my life I've had that, hey, this is a 50-50 thing. It's half my fault. I should have never hired you from the get-go. The other 50 is you just stink at your job.
Well, like Gundy said, it's got to get used to people thinking he's not very smart.
Yeah.
I knew he was going to give us something from Big 12 Media. That was not as severe as the DUI thing from last year.
No, yeah, he went down a bad path last year. But, yeah, that's old Mike Gundy there. Yeah, it's 50-50 on this. It's half of your fault. The other half is the fact that I hired you basically from the get-go and made a bad mistake. So we'll have more of that. Get into a little Deion Sanders coming up this hour, too, and what he had to say. And Tyler's going to have a question for you. We'll get to that, one of Tyler's questions here. 803-404-6100. We come back. I caught this on the old Twitter machine last night. The Buffalo Bills are building a new gorgeous-looking stadium.
Yep.
But granted, I don't live in Buffalo, nor do I go to Buffalo Bills games. I'm not sure I'm a fan of this. We'll get into that. Think about your most historic and specific professional sports stadiums. What are the ones that simply cannot be torn down or built over in professional sports? Baseball, basketball, and football. What are the most historic stadiums that we simply can't tear down? You're listening to Tyler Head, Bill Gunner, Captain David Dare. It is the Halftime Show. Bill Gunner for Dr. Dan Balknight and the Men's Clinic. Guys, you might be experiencing a few issues because you know what? As we get older, that tends to actually happen. We're not getting younger any day. Every day is a day older, and maybe your body is not cooperating. Maybe you started working out, but you're not losing weight the way you used to. Maybe you're starting to notice some of those old hair follicles ending up on the pillow a little bit more frequently after a great night of sleep. Maybe you're stressed out. Maybe it's just low T. It could be a lot of things, but let me tell you, you need to go and get it checked out. Don't shrug off your health, guys. As you turn 40 and get past 40, your health can start to decline. And if you're not cognizant of it, if you're not paying attention, it can really bring you down. So call the Men's Clinic, 803-875-MENS, where they are in the business of restoring men to the prime of their life. And they understand how to do it. They understand you're not an individual. You're not generic. You are an individual and need to be treated that way. Give them a phone call, 803-875-MENS. Tell them Bill Gunner sent you. $2:19 on a Thursday afternoon, July the 10th. Again, a reminder, tomorrow morning, make sure you tune in to the early game. It'll be Tyler Head, Preston Thorne, and Jen Jensen. They'll get you up and get you going. And then we'll tell Tyler, you can't leave. You got to stay from 9 to 12. Big show?
I'm used to it by now. I am working on something for me and Preston tomorrow. I am compiling a list of all college football rivalry trophies and ranking them.
Okay.
And I will let you know where South Carolina stands with the Palmetto Bowl, with the
High up.
Mayor's Cup with Mizzou,
Middle of the ground.
and the Bonham Trophy
Yeah.
with A&M.
Let me know if that's dead last. It might be dead last.
It's not high, I'll say that.
I want you to think about this, and if you don't remember or if you don't know about it, I want you to go back to the civil conflict trophy as well.
So civil conflict is one though, and I'm because there's so many, I'm keeping it limited to like ones that are still active.
Oh no. You gotta go. You gotta throw in the well-known rivalry trophy that was Connecticut and South Florida.
Honestly, that one might be dead last because
That's what I said.
that was one that nobody cared about to the point it got left on the bench.
Yeah.
For one, they just made the rivalry up. Like
Right.
there's no correlation between Connecticut and Central Florida outside of, hey, if we kind of put their names together, we can do this funny thing with it. And then they left the trophy on the bench afterwards.
Yeah. So we'll. I look forward to that. So make sure you tune in tomorrow morning. I'll be by myself tomorrow. Well, Captain David Dare will be here with me, of course.
Music trivia with Dave.
Stump the Dave. You weren't here on Monday, but we will be investigating bringing a Stump the Dave segment back.
How much do you know about Larkin Poe?
I know none. I know none.
Dave, that's your job tomorrow. Tell him the entire lore and history of Larkin Poe.
All right.
That will be saved for the 3 to 3:30 segment. But I will get. We're going to get Stump the Dave going again here at some point. 803.
You're not here 3 to 3:30.
You catch on quick.
Boom. There you
Oh. Gee,
Nothing gets by you, does it?
no.
Welcome back, Dave.
Yeah. Welcome back. Now we got some Stump the Dave, so we'll throw in some Larkin Poe trivia for you in the coming weeks. Next week we'll really start to nail down how the guests we're having and the stuff that we're planning and plotting. So prepare accordingly. 803-404-6100 is how you can weigh in if you want to do so. So I was on the phone. I'm on the phone trying to let somebody in my gate at the house.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
One of those gate code things.
Yeah, and I don't want. I'm trying to do two things at once, and I have to enter a code to let them in. I was on Twitter last night, and I came across this. I think if I had to be a true NFL fan, I think I'd actually be a Buffalo Bills fan.
Sure.
I was kind of starting to buy in, and part of it is Orchard Park. And when I was growing up, I got in the Bible, or not Bible, the book vacate, whatever they do at the school.
Vacation Bible School.
Not Vacation Bible School. What was it? The book fair. Book fair.
Okay,
You ever have one of those?
Yeah. Where you go and they set up, you buy books and posters and all that kind of stuff.
I bought a Dan Marino poster.
Okay. Cool.
Don't know where it's at now, but it got signed. He signed it. We had a family relative, and he signed it, and it got framed. And so I became a Dolphins fan. But I didn't become a Dolphins fan because of the Dolphins. I became a Dolphins fan because of Dan Marino.
You were a Dan Marino fan, and he just happened to play on the Dolphins. Yeah.
But I remember great games against the Bills and the Dolphins in the 90s.
Sure. Jim
Playoff
Kelly.
games, yeah.
Yeah, great teams.
Yeah, Marino and Kelly. Well, I think now I'm more of a Bills fan, not because of one individual player, but a Bills fan. So anyway, Orchard Park, I don't know. I didn't realize this until I saw this tweet the other night that the Bills are building a brand new $2.1 billion stadium.
Right next to it.
Right next to it.
Yeah.
But I thought, man, Orchard Park, I've enjoyed watching Monday night games, Sunday night games there in November, December when it's not good weather.
It is a intimate venue that is very old school. It's one of the older venues still left in the league. And when you watch a game there, that's kind of the raw feel that a Lambeau has. You know what I mean? And they're going to go to a place that has a lot of bells and whistles to it. That is kind of the new standard of stadiums that unfortunately we're losing those old school type of feels because more of these stadiums are being torn down or being replaced.
So do you have? I came up with a list here of five different venues. I will admit some of this plays into places I have never been before.
Okay.
That did play into this a little bit, but 5 different venues that I would never want to see taken down, and that is both college and NFL football. That is also to go along with Major League Baseball and also, of course, NBA.
So, and I can't pick anything that's already been torn down because I have a special place in my heart for the Georgia Dome. And Mercedes-Benz Stadium is nice, but the Georgia Dome was perfect, man, in every single way.
Okay. So that got torn down, but all right. You got at least 2 or 3 others?
Yeah, I have a couple others. Obviously Fenway Park, again, standing history, hard to argue with there. Lambeau Field, Wrigley Field, and then, for the number 5, just for the history, probably Soldier Field.
Okay.
I know it's kind of it's not in the best shape right now.
Yeah.
But the history, like I'm a big history person. Like the history behind it is so significant that like I would love to go there just to visit to say that I went there.
Okay.
Type of thing.
All right. So 3 of mine were right there with you: Wrigley, Fenway, and Lambeau. Like it's kind of one of those things now. I'm starting the way we're tearing stuff down and rebuilding new. I'm starting to freak out a little bit. Like I better hurry up and get to those 3.
Yeah.
I think of those 3. Lambeau's the one that will be
Lambeau's
there.
not going anywhere.
Yeah. It worries me every year that I don't make it to Wrigley or Fenway because I'm like, I might have missed an opportunity.
Because the thing is, like, if they can tear down Yankee Stadium,
Yeah.
they can tear anywhere down.
Yeah.
Because you thought, oh, well, they're never going to take this place down, but they did.
Yep.
And they built a new one and call it New Yankee Stadium, and that's worse.
So I said real quick, I said NBA. There's no Garden anymore. There's no there's no Forum. The Forum. So I went through the list because I was trying to find an NBA arena that I'd be like, yeah, I'd like to go there. I'd like to go I'd like to go see that.
Sure.
And I couldn't find one.
I mean, the United Center was obviously where a lot of Jordan's heyday was.
Mm-hmm.
So you can say, hey, I visited the house that Jordan built, so to speak. The Garden's obviously still the oldest venue in the NBA. Actually looked it up. There's no venue other than the Garden prior to 1990 still standing.
Right.
So the Target Center where the Timberwolves play came around in 1990, and pretty much everything after that's been in the past 30 to 35 years. So it's like, how much history is really in
Right.
these venues, which, again, is the reason to visit a Lambeau, reason to visit Fenway. Because, like, man, Brett Favre and Bart Starr and all these amazing Yankees or Red Sox and Cubs and all these guys that made history that you kind of, when you go to these places, you almost kind of try and look through that lens, right?
Right.
Like, hey, there's where that play happened. There's where that happened. Or here's where people stood when so-and-so was taking place. Like, you try to put yourself in those moments that, again, I'll say for the perspective of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which I went to a concert there a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, this is cool, but, like, I don't have a connection here. I don't have any memories here. I don't have any, like, legacy here with this place.
You'll probably get next week a chance to do the little, they typically on, I think it's Tuesday night, maybe Wednesday night, they go down and have a big kind of reception for all the media members. They go down into the Delta Sky Club, and you go around there, and average food, somewhat average beverages, but that's actually really cool. And you can kind of go out on the field and see everything. So I couldn't find a basketball one. I couldn't. And 803-404-6100. If there's an NBA, besides everybody wanting to go to the Hornets, to go see a game in Charlotte.
And like basketball arenas, I think are tougher to be unique because most arenas are pretty straightforward. Like, at least when you have football stadiums, baseball stadiums that are built outward more, you can have your uniqueness and your kind of charm to it, and they all look a little bit different. But like basketball arenas, outside of looking at the court, it's very hard to tell of where you're at sometimes.
So that led me to college football, because when I sent this to you last night, I was like, all right, I'll talk about the Bills and everything. And by the way, again, there's just something about Orchard Park and everything that I find slightly attractive and a lot of fun.
Sure.
So I went to college football. And I've been to a lot of stadiums for college football. 2 in particular that I haven't been to. So I've given you 3 so far. So I started thinking about it. I've been to LSU. South goes this year. South fans, if you've never been, wear a little bit of some armor. Don't just go in there like without some body armor on you, because those fans get a little wacky. But that stadium, the uniqueness of it, the age of it, the way it is around that stadium, absolutely phenomenal. If you've never been to Baton Rouge, it's, to me, one of the top 3 environments in college football, hands down. South Carolina, I would have in that top 3, by the way, just before anybody critiques me at this. But the other one, I had 2. So LSU was number 4 on my list, but I had 2, and I was trying to decide which I'd rather go to. There's something about Nebraska, I think because of the history and Memorial Stadium, that I would want to go see. The Sea of Red, everything, the way those fans are, I would love that. If you offered me right now, hey, do you want to go to a Notre Dame game or a Nebraska game? Go see that. I'm not sure which one I would choose.
I'd probably go Notre Dame, just older and more history there. Again, it's just kind of like the epitome of college football, but it's definitely, that's a tough one.
803-404-6100. If there is a particular stadium that you don't want torn down or you'd like to go to, oh, good one, Cameron Indoor. I've actually been there. I think that's why I did miss. I went for an AAU game, which was a weird experience because it was like being at a lot of high school gyms around here. 803-404-6100. We'll come back. You're listening to the Halftime Show. All right, let me go see if I can cut this one. 2:35 on your Thursday afternoon. Captain David Ayer, Tyler Head, Bill Gunner here as we roll along, getting you ready for Jay and Terry, 3 to 6. I got to admit, I haven't paid enough attention. Jay is doing Jay versus the people.
Jay versus the internet. So that's something that Elijah started because, again, we're kind of in the midst of talking season. We just kind of come up with whatever we can. And, kind of seeing Jay's opinion versus the opinion of our patrons on Twitter. And it's been an interesting back and forth.
Seems like Jay, at least I saw numbers the other day, looks like Jay is not winning.
No, he is not.
Okay.
The people are winning.
Pick it up, Jay. Pick it up. Can't have you embarrassing the rest of the station by losing to the people all the time. 803-404-6100. By the way, going back to the previous segment, a couple of y'all weighing in. Jacob says, I went to the Bills-Pats playoff game that had the wind chill like 20 below zero, and even with the frigid temp, it was the closest to a college football environment I've been to that wasn't a college football game.
I could see that. Yeah, the rowdy bunch up there. And, again, something about the way that stadiums are laid out creates that more intimate type of environment that I really like to see at the professional level because, again, we see it everywhere in college sports, but it's not really as prevalent when you get up to the pro ranks.
Chris weighed in. He went with Wrigley, Fenway, Dodger Stadium. That was one I forgot.
Okay,
That'd be a good one.
That's a good one.
Lambeau. And I guess I didn't think I've been to Madison Square Garden, but I went for a wrestling match.
Okay.
I believe this was about when I was 9, maybe 10, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there, and saw Bret Hart, and I think it was against The Undertaker.
Okay. Was it like a pay-per-view? Was it like a house show?
No, it was like just I don't remember. I mean, but I know it was a big deal, and we were up. I got to go up there for that, and I was in New York, and we went to that. Mark weighs in, same thing, Madison Square Garden in the 60s.
Yeah. But again, like in the 60s, sure. Like, do you have the same feelings now going to it? Would it be the same kind of thing?
I feel like it'd be darker.
Maybe.
I feel like it would be just like, it feels like the clip I've seen of, Willis Reed coming back out after the injury, and it just looks, the lighting is, it looks like something that you would see in the 60s, I think, or 70s.
That's how I feel whenever I watch like an old game from the Superdome. I feel like it was just a lot darker back then. Like, I don't know, I'm sure lighting's come a long way in the past 30 to 40 years. Maybe that had something to do with it. And also, these venues also allows you to smoke indoors, by the way, because like Georgia went to several Sugar Bowls back in the 80s with the Herschel Walker teams, and they would talk. You would hear players talk about there was just this haze that would kind of circle around the roof of the arena because of the people smoking inside. I'm sure Madison Square Garden had the same deal.
That's kind of, it's funny, not staying, but NRG Stadium in Houston the other day when the United States took on Mexico in soccer, and they fired off all the fireworks, and because the thing was closed,
didn't have anywhere to go.
The haze didn't go anywhere. Another texter weighs in and goes with, these are some good ones. Superdome.
Okay, sure.
Fenway.
All right.
Notre Dame, L.A. Coliseum, and Old Wembley Stadium over in London.
Okay, yeah, those are fair. The L.A. Coliseum's not, I guess, as old. Well, no, because it's been around since
the Olympics in the 80s.
Olympics. No, before that, because the original Super Bowl was played there. So I think it got renamed to the Memorial Coliseum at some point, but it's been around for a very long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Super Bowl I was there.
And then when you talk about stadiums, you have these issues. Ty weighs in and it says, as a 6'3", respectively, 260-pound human man, Wrigley seats are a tad too small.
I can see that. Everything at Wrigley's kind of small, right? Isn't that kind of the appeal to it?
I think so.
It's just this small, tight-packed ballpark in a city block that you can hit home runs across the street.
Into what is it? It's Boston. One thing about Boston and Chicago and that state there is basically, hey, there's a party going on outside.
Yeah.
Like in San Francisco, it's like, hey, there's a party in the water.
Yeah.
You can catch a baseball.
Well, like when the Cubs won the World Series back in 2016, there were thousands of people not watching the game, watching the marquee to see an update to see that they'd won. That's just the atmosphere there.
Keep sending those in. Stadiums that you either want to attend or stadiums that never need to be torn down. 803-404-6100. Deion Sanders. He's always worth a quote or two. I tell you what,
would be.
Captain Dave, if you don't mind, this is going to be clip number 1. Deion Sanders. I think all of the Big 12 is kind of stunned at what Texas Tech is all of a sudden doing here in terms of NIL. Here is Deion yesterday talking about the offseason for Texas Tech.
Joey got some money. Joey, where you at, baby? You spending that money. I love it. I love it. Once upon a time, you guys was talking junk about me going in that portal. Now, when everybody go in the portal, it's okay. It's cool when they do it. But it's a problem when I do it. Ain't that a rap song? First of all, let's get this straight. I love me some Joey McGuire. And one of the best coaches in our conference. I've seen him excel from high school all the way to where he is now, and he's a winner, and I absolutely love it. And you know, I love him because he's a man of standard. We played there last year, and we was getting bombarded by them Totilos. I don't know how to say it. Somebody say it. Tortillas. We was getting bombarded by that, and Joey grabbed the microphone and told him to stop throwing at us, or it's gonna be some consequences. And I love that, and I love Joey. Joey, I know you're out there, baby. I love you, man.
Tortillas is the word you were looking for, sir.
Dion has a little bit of Spurrier in him, and whatever you ask him, it's really irrelevant. It's pretty irrelevant. To whatever's going to come out of it. I'll never forget sitting in a Spurrier press conference. They asked him about the defensive line, and somehow he spent 5 minutes on Steven Garcia.
Yeah,
he was just sitting there like,
well, what about Steven Garcia?
Oh, it's just lack of work ethic, not being able to know the plays properly. It was just that was what was on his mind. I think he even got to the end. I was like, what was the question again?
Yeah, I always, because he does that another duly noted podcast every single week down there in Gainesville, and I pulled the clip the other day of him taking the shot at Auburn and Kentucky in the same breath, because he just says whatever comes to his mind. Like it's not something he comes in and says, oh, I want to say this about this team. Like, no, if it comes in his mind, he's going to say it. And, you know, again, he's 80 years old. He doesn't have facing any repercussions. Yeah,
I think Spurrier shows up whenever he goes do an interview with the things he wants to talk about. And if that's what you wanted to talk about as the interviewer,
sure,
good. It fits in. If it doesn't, whatever your question was is going to be pretty much irrelevant to what he wants to talk about. But Deion Sanders, nothing crazy from him. Going to be an interesting year. He went out and got Caden Salter from Liberty out of the transfer portal, and that'll be the guy that he expects to replace his son, Shedeur Sanders. And then he's got a highly thought-of freshman as well, Jaden Davis, I think is his name, that's from Georgia. And it was a one-time commitment to Southern Cal. But does it lose luster without his son there?
A little bit. I think.
Like, I'm interested, number one, is his heart into it as much as it has been? And
now, like, he's the story now, right? Like, Shedeur was his own story. Travis Hunter was another story. Like, you had so many things happening simultaneously at Colorado. They were always interesting. Now it's really just kind of about him, which still very interesting, still going to give us quotes and probably do some other kind of shenanigans as the season goes along that makes us talk about him. But, like, he doesn't have those players that are now kind of larger than the program anymore, it seems like.
I'm sure he'll find some.
I'm sure he will find some.
I'll be interested to see if something goes a little south now. Does it become a lot easier for him to walk away? 803-404-6100, back on our stadium discussion. This is a good one. The old Reds ballpark and Riverfront Stadium.
Okay. Yeah, and again, if we wanted to incorporate stadiums that have been torn down or aren't used anymore, then, there's a long list of ones there.
Okay.
Again, like me with the Georgia Dome. But, yeah, like those places, if that means a lot to you, then sure.
And Don weighs in, and he goes really old school, the Coliseum in Rome.
Okay. Not going to see any events there these days.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure
you can go check it out.
Maybe we can get a U2 concert or something over there. Maybe a Fish concert so Jay can go over there and sit.
You know what? It surprised me the NFL hasn't tried to play like a preseason game there yet or not.
It's actually, that's actually a very good point. 803-404-6100 will come back. We will wrap up the Thursday afternoon edition of the Halftime Show. Final segment of the Thursday program. Follow my Twitter. I'll try and inform you of tomorrow who we'll have on the program. Tyler will be back on in the morning.
Yes.
With Preston and Jen. So make sure you get up bright and early. Even if you're trying to plan to sleep in. Just get up bright and early and join them. They'll have you covered.
Have a fun time, as always.
So,
Preston's fun.
There you go. So, so get up and get going. And then Tyler, we chain him to the table in there, and then we're going to tell stay to 9 to 12.
Yeah, it's there's a padlock on the door. I don't know the code. They don't let me out.
Very mean what Terry does to you. I never
It really is. I'm glad you recognize that. I need help.
I feel bad
badly.
for you. And they throw you like a pack of peanuts in there. I don't get it.
I'm blinking twice.
Yeah, okay.
Telling you I need help.
All right, look out for Tyler in the morning there with Preston and Jen. By the way, I learned it. You want to talk about being stabbed in the back?
Okay.
So we sent my pick in.
Sure.
So I'm talking to Tyler yesterday. I'm trying to make it like an us first day kind of thing. Like, Tyler just looks point blank at Terry, and I was like, well, I helped Preston. I was like, all right, cool. Hope you're happy.
Well, he asked for my help. So I gave him my help.
To be quite frank, as I look at the numbers here from the Corley Pool Solutions Checkered Flag Challenge, you haven't helped Preston all that much.
Yeah, it's been a rough year. I feel like the ideas have been good, the execution not so much. A lot of bad luck for his picks.
He's
so
kind of
can't win them all.
He's kind of like the quarterback that doesn't quite understand when the play comes in how to handle it.
Now, to be fair, I don't give him just one. I'm like, hey, here's some ideas, and I do allow him to pick freely from that.
Gotcha.
So
right.
I don't just give him one and say pick this. So he does have some free will.
Corley Pool Solutions Checkered Flag Challenge again, and right now Reggie is 1 point ahead of me. He's got Chase Elliott this week. I got Kyle Larson. Preston went with SVG. Jen went with McDowell, and Josh goes with Tyler Reddick in our picks. And again, I'm going to keep you updated as long as I'm right there in it. When you stop hearing me give updates, you know something's gone wrong.
Okay.
But right now, Reggie at 72 points. Me, I'm at 71, looking for my third championship. Reggie's going for his fourth. Josh is at 66. Preston's at 58, and Jen is at 55. So probably should keep a little bit of an eye on NASCAR for Darlington Raceway President Josh Harris. He's right there, and then try and surpass Reggie Anderson, who is I still think he's on PEDs for the. I mean, he made such a run 2 years ago. Now is led it with back-to-back championships. So we'll keep you updated on that. A couple people weighing in here. Our good buddy DJ Ronnie Lane, who normally you can catch out at Wacky Wednesdays, spinning the ones and the twos. I hope I said that correctly and didn't sound too old saying that. Ronnie says, "Hey brother, I can go with two things with the old Memorial Stadium. The old Memorial Stadium where the Baltimore Orioles." Maybe get all Terry Ford all excited, but where the Baltimore Orioles played.
Okay.
And he says, I'm going to say my favorite stadium, and we might have to come back to this. I'd like to know what people my age, people a bit older. He says, I'm going to say my favorite is Capital City Stadium in downtown Columbia, which is, they got to do something with that before I go on some kind of wild political rant.
I was going to say, why is that still just sitting in disarray? I've always wondered.
I truthfully have no idea, to answer your question.
Because when did they close it?
It's been a while.
Yeah, it looks like it's been a while.
It's been, yeah.
I look at some of those posters and stuff. I'm like, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, there's trees going through the concrete, growing up through the concrete there. So, but he goes with those. Doug goes with the Detroit's Tiger Stadium. That is a nostalgic one where I see like Cecil Felder hitting a home run or a highlight of Alan Trammell, and I'm like, man, that stadium looks really cool.
Yeah.
So, another texter goes with one that you mentioned, the Madhouse on Madison, the Chicago Stadium. He said, I saw many a great Bulls and Blackhawks players and games growing up. And that was from Chad.
Because that's, again, you want to go into and kind of envision the legendary moments, the NBA Finals, all those kind of things took place there with this. So, again, a lot of history for a place that's only been around for 30, 35 years, whatever it's been. 803-404-6100. So we opened the program getting into a little bit of discussion as it pertains to what we did last night. Turns out we both watched the same documentary last night. I know, crazy, right?
So what goes on our watch list? What is on the watch list for tonight?
I'm trying to think. Oh, God, we got you can do like the list on Netflix and stuff. We got a couple set aside. I can't remember. She's not really into like the sports documentaries, so I don't make her watch like 30 for 30s. But, really it's kind of the obscure stuff that we otherwise wouldn't really have an interest in. Like, hey, Netflix says this is like number 3 on trending. We'll give it a shot. Like, that's how we kind of stumble across a lot of those, I feel like.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got MLB Network, but that could very well be on tonight. You got to look and see what the MLB Network is, and so we'll do that. But this is your time, because I'll be honest, next week. Now, what you also could do, because I've been up since like 4, where all those people are like, how you like sleeping in? Well, I didn't sleep very good last night, and so I was up at 4 a.m. watching the Genesis Scottish Open this morning. There could be a rewatching of that. But with all that being said, this is it. Get your documentary time in, get the movie time in with the kids, because really starting next week, we start really getting into full-fledged rewatching of SEC Media Days that tells us what happened and what coaches or what players were interesting today.
This is where we kick it into another gear. I feel like the football video game getting released this week is kind of one level. Media Days is another level. And that calendar turns to August. And we get into camp, we're off and running.
It's going to be a lot. And again, tune back in tomorrow. I'll have a couple of guests on as I'll work on that. And then really next week, as we've gotten through our first week, we will have a whole bunch of guests. You'll be over in Atlanta and have a really good time over there. Watch out. Jay gets a little wild and crazy at night. But
can't wait to see it.
Yeah, he gets a little out of hand, but we will get fully into it, because this is kind of like your sports vacation week.
Yes,
if you will, sports vacation. So enjoy that. Find something good tonight to watch. I might get into a little bit of what you watched tomorrow to see what other documentaries we can promote to the people out there. Tyler, been a lot of fun, a lot of good conversation. Look forward to it tomorrow.
Yep,
and I hope my racer this week wins and knocks off you and Preston. So y'all have a great rest of the day. Tyler, back on in the morning. I'll be here from 12 to 3 tomorrow.